I'm going to sneak in a little college football here, if you will. Allow me to do it.
Please.
And it centers around one school. So our Husky bros out there who somehow still listen, despite the fact that I host the show, I appreciate you, and thanks for being with us every single day.
Do you also want to thank the Beaver fans because you're also on the show?
Nah, come on. Beaver fans have a representative on the show. They have two representatives on the show.
I think sometimes they'd argue they don't.
Husky fan doesn't have any representation here, and we just make fun of them. A couple interesting stories out of there. So first, it comes to the finances of the move. So the Big Ten, the Pac-12 is officially dead. R.I.P. It ended on Sunday night at about, 9:30? When did that Oregon State game?
9:30, 9:40.
9:30-ish, right? Game's over. R.I.P. Pac-12. Big Ten era is coming for Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA. Christian Capel, friend of the program.
Yeah, great reporting on this.
Had a report that came out. It was a Friday, Saturday, I can't remember what day. Basically that saying they're hopeful that the move to the Big Ten is going to pay off in the long run because they feel like they're joining one of the power broker conferences in the sport, but they're not, and Oregon won't, and USC and UCLA will, but Oregon and Washington won't get a full share until the next media deal. So you got to get through this whole media deal, which is, I want to say, 8 years long. It is going to come with significant costs up front, and so he reported that the athletic director is projecting nearly a $30 million cash deficit for their athletic programs in the fiscal year of 2025. And some of this is just down to the simple nature of like having to hire people and have a studio for filming things and editing stuff.
The Big Ten wants a studio for entertainment purposes.
That they wanted every one of their campuses and every one of their athletic departments to have. And so they're going to be in the hole about $30 million projecting for 25. We don't know what that means for 26 and beyond, but not getting the full share, a little bit of a deficit. They again are maintaining this will all pay off in the long run. And I tend to agree with them there. But it's interesting nonetheless to look at it in the short term of my program is the outlier and totally unique to this because we have a sugar daddy.
And you're not worried about money.
You're not worried about money.
You're not worried about money.
If you don't have a sugar daddy, I've said this a lot about Cal and Stanford. Stanford, not so much. Cal more so of like they haven't paid any of their stadium down. Now you're going to the ACC. It's great to still be on the big level of college athletics, but we'll see how you afford it 4 or 5 years down the road. It's interesting that this is happening at Washington as well.
Well, there's already, and then look, it may just be Reddit-type chatter, but there's already chatter that Cal and Stanford are regretting the ACC thing already.
I mean, the ACC is going to implode, not if, when.
Yeah, and I know, Jim Phillips is their commissioner, right? I think that's his name. He's been out and proud about basically saying even if we lose a Florida State and Clemson, we'll be okay. And it's like, well, I've heard that before.
I mean, you're the different version of the Big 12 if you can hold it together.
Right. I still think that ends up being a merge, by the way, those two conferences in some weird way. Once Florida State, who is being welcomed by Florida openly, and their AD to join the SEC at some point.
Clemson, one's out, yeah.
Yeah, it just makes sense. I saw this, and my kind of first thought was, one, good for Christian Capel having it on Montlake. He's a good friend of the show and does a great job independently covering the Huskies. Why is the Big Ten not mandated to do this? This is like the equivalent of, I'm blanking on his name, the Panthers owner, Dave Tepper.
Yeah.
Have you seen that story? He's basically threatening Charlotte to give him stadium money.
He wants a new
stadium. And he's basically crying poor, and he's one of the richest owners in football.
He's saying, we'll leave if you don't pay for it.
He's also been a complete a-hole since owning the team, and they have been worse by a substantial margin since he's become the owner. I don't understand the logic here. And Washington and Oregon, certainly Washington, I think, more so than Oregon, win in this for the financial benefits of it, right? Because Oregon wants the money, but they also, to your point, have a sugar daddy. But also the exposure. You get better TV windows for the most part, and you're on more seeable options, right? Whereas like the Pac-2 is going to have decent options, at least CW's nationwide, but they're going to be more featured, I think, in the Big Ten and playing, according to everybody that watches, more of the big boy style football, right? I don't know why they didn't say, hey, why don't you want a studio? Well, you build it yourself.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I mean, it could have just been part of the stipulation to join the conference. Of like,
why would you agree to that? You have to build a $30 million TV
Well, I don't think
studio?
I don't think that's where the whole deficit's. I don't think the studio's $30 million.
No, I know
but it's part of the $30 million.
But it's
deficit,
a part of that money.
Yeah.
And it just, for what? So occasionally they can be there or have somebody there? It seems cool in theory. That was something I saw and I was like, It's very interesting. I don't know how Washington Husky fan registers all of this stuff, but
Well,
just fascinating.
I think there was a bit of pushback and frustration when they saw the headline of like, wait a minute. A public university that gets taxpayer dollars is going to run a $30 million athletic budget deficit just in year one.
Yes.
Now, again, they're maintaining all the extra revenue will come in, playoff appearances, all the payouts and all this. Like, this will eventually pay for itself. But you better hope it does sooner than later, because $30 million hole is a pretty big one week in and week out. On another Washington note, I saw this, and I'm curious how Husky fan would feel about it. So this came from, who the hell wrote this? Let me scroll up. It was two of the bros at Cooper Pategna. He's a guy at 24/7 Sports.
Oh, yeah.
And he actually, I think randomly was on the Oregon staff. I don't know what his role was when Mario was here, but now he's turned into kind of a recruiting analyst, college football voice guy. He does a podcast for 24/7 Sports. He did a ranking of the marquee true freshman quarterbacks coming into college football this year by their likelihood, a ranking of their likelihood to play in year one. So, guys, it'll see the field right away. So just to give you a glimpse, number one on this list, I believe, let me double check, is Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, right? 5-star kid. He is the heir apparent. That dude's going to play this year right away at some point in a game. He's going to see the field. He's number one. Number two is the DJ Lagway kid at Florida, because Billy Napier needs to save his job. Here, I got this 5-star quarterback.
Look at all this promise he's given us. Yeah.
I thought this was interesting. The number 3 quarterback on the list of likeliest to play and have a significant role in his team this year was Demon Williams, who many people, I think that's how you pronounce his first name. You might not know it. He is a commit of the Washington Huskies. And he is saying this kid has shown flash. He doesn't necessarily think he's in the driver's seat to unseat Will Rogers, who's a transfer in to start, who was still in Seattle.
Well, he's a transfer who decommitted
and then recommitted
when Fish got there. Yeah.
Yes, he did. But he is saying that he could be in position to see his fair share of playing time in Seattle as Jed Fish and the Huskies try and replace Michael Penix Jr., navigate a massive roster turnover. They convinced him to transfer from Arizona. He was a commit to Arizona in the first few weeks after being in Seattle. Was a big move for Fish. He's quickly earning a reputation as an undersized playmaking point guard that plays the game with elite command. He's drawn comparisons to former Arizona signal caller or current Arizona signal caller Noah Fafita in regards to his stature and his play style.
So he's a smaller build.
He's like
quick,
5'11", 190 pounds,
okay.
quick athlete, a dual threat kind of guy. He's from Chandler, Arizona. Of just the idea, and we've done this with both of our schools many a times. You guys did it last year with Aiden Childs of like, what do you prefer the guy who's a little more established, who might lead you to a win,
yes,
or a guy who is your future, who you might pay off in the long run if you get him snaps as a freshman?
Well, the more win now guy is maybe the more popular answer for people because nobody wants to go through a bad season, but I have no clue if Will Rogers is win now guy.
He's a good quarterback, but I don't know what he can do with that roster.
Right?
Mississippi State.
What were they last year? Do you remember?
I do not remember. I wouldn't say 6-6, 7-5-ish.
Okay,
but I'll look.
So like that to me is just okay. We've talked about the Husky expectations for next year. If Fish thinks that's the long-term play, and by the way, he identified Noah Fafita. He eventually made that switch with Jaden DeLore and put Fafita in, and now Arizona's got all this big buzz and promise.
5-7 last year in Mississippi State.
I play him. I'm done like questioning either way. We did this with Washington once upon a time. We did it with Sam Heward.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Sam Heward not playing? Okay, Sam Heward's going to like his 3rd, 4th school. I mean, the guy's transferred a few times over at this point. Dylan Morris clearly wasn't the answer for them.
No.
They found Michael Penix. I'm going to trust Jed Fish on this. If he ends up going Will Rogers to start and subs him out for this kid, then I'm going to believe that he's making the right decision for the program. And I think that's kind of the only way you have to view this. There doesn't need to be a debate. Nobody's a coach. Nobody's seeing the film. You just have to trust your Jed Fish is going to make the right decision for them.
Very true.
By the way, in thinking about this out loud as you went through that, also makes me kind of, not that Washington's not a good job. Please do not misinterpret this. Arizona is just so loaded. I'm surprised he left.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
And that conference feels very vulnerable, feels very open to the idea of like, hey.
Somebody could come in and dominate it.
Yeah, whether that's Utah, maybe it's Arizona with the returning players, you know. It just feels like such an open, unpredictable conference. But to his credit, he wants to go to Seattle. It's a big market. And see if he can build it if he stays in Washington.
He got a pay raise, pretty significant pay raise.
He gets a pay raise, yeah, I get that. But it just in thinking about the quarterback stuff, I was remembering how good Noah Fafita was. But Yeah, if he wants to go the young guy, who cares? Like if Will Rogers was 6-6 or 7-5 last year, you're not selling me on a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'd rather see what the young guy does if they don't start out promising.
It's interesting because he pointed out, too, the freshmen that played last year, some sparingly, some a lot. Some have hope for their future. Some have had to find new homes. The Nico kid at Tennessee played a little bit, not a lot, but got to start in their bowl game.
He's going to be starting for Tennessee.
They're very high on him this year. Dante Moore started right out of the gate.
Probably won't play unless
wasn't
Jay
great.
gets
Probably
hurt.
not going to play this year.
Yep.
Jackson Arnold didn't play a ton until late in the season at Oklahoma, but again, they're very high on him and what he could be.
They are.
Jaden Rashada played right away.
Yep.
He is now at Georgia
Backup,
from Arizona
though.
State as a backup.
Yep.
And Avery Johnson is the other one at Kansas State who didn't play. I didn't start every game, but played a little bit at the end of the year.
And they're getting Big 12 title buzz.
They got a lot of hope and promise.
Kansas State are like the hot two teams to pick in the Big 12
dude.
right now. How about the state of Kansas
State
having
of
a
Kansas
moment?
is ready. So interesting Washington notes. I'm curious how Husky fan will feel about that. And this is coming from somebody who was once the freshman quarterback in the Ty Thompson days. Remember the Ty Thompson,
your obsession
Anthony
with him.
Brown days?
It was insane.
That was the debate. I mean, Anthony Brown sucked, so that was kind of the thing. But sometimes it works out for you, sometimes it doesn't. I'm curious how Husky fan feels about that.